agenda that you see printed behind that is basically dealing only with the strategic plan. We'll talk about some background, the structure for the discussion, and then get on with the discussion. So a motion isn't even really appropriate since we don't have a quorum, but is that acceptable to everybody that we just work off of this?
Yes.
Amended? Okay. Just as a statement of background, I wanted to mention the fact that RWR has a strategic plan, and those of us on the Water Authority have a copy of it, and we discussed with Dwight and among the authority whether we should be working off the same strategic plan, whether there should be a separate strategic plan, and I think there was pretty well uniform agreement that the Water and Sewerage Authority needs a separate strategic plan because it's really a different animal and a different entity, and our focus is different. RWR's strategic plan deals a lot with, well, primarily even with operational issues, and we don't deal with operational issues. So what we thought we would do is have a strategic plan that guides the Water and Sewage Authority over the next several years, and then get that together. And one of the last steps of the process will be sort of a true up, looking at both of them and making sure they're aligned where they need to be aligned, and they're separate where they need to be separate. So that's what we, leading up to the point that we are today, that's sort of where we were. I did want to mention that there are relevant documents for us to consider when we are looking at the Water and Sewage Authority as an entity and what our objectives and so forth would be, and that would be our enabling legislation, the lease agreement, task force agreement report, and those sorts of things. We don't really need to belabor those today, and they might not even be relevant to the first high-level discussion, but as we get into it, we need to keep in mind what our specific role is, which is really why we all agree that there should be separate plans. And then just want to talk about the structure of the discussion today. I thought that we would just start out with brainstorming, which is just a high-level look at all the components we need to look at. Sometimes details come up, and sometimes they get in the way of the big picture, so we wanted to have a parking board. That'll be the parking board where something comes up that is going to be relevant to the strategic plan, but not to the big picture look at it we're trying to do today. So we'll have that parking board. And then when WSA started with a strategic plan, we had one structure, and when RWR started with a plan, they had one structure. So I thought we might take a minute to take a look at the structures and see whether we wanted to incorporate some of the components that RWR had in theirs that we did not. So that's what we need to do next. And then what I would suggest, once we agree on components, just take a look and say whether we want to put a maximum amount of time to discuss certain components so that we don't take the whole day. Sometimes we can drill down into details and lose sight of having to move forward. So we'll look at that as we look at what our components would be. I drew a couple of pictures of what I kind of saw the meetings today looking like, and the process looking like, and that's a funnel. We really need to start with very high-level inputs. And incidentally, when we first planned this, I wanted to make sure we had a big room, and it turns out we have a very small amount of people. So the big room may be overkill, but one reason for that was that it's just part of the visual that we are trying to take a big picture look here. So we don't want to be crowded in. We want to see it as a very big picture thing. And our inputs, at least at this level, for the kickoff of this event, need to be all high level, big picture, and then we will filter down. And then to further clarify how I see that. A lot of times we will have a discussion and we sort of get bogged down in the weeds. So what we want to do today is park the weeds. Look, that's supposed to be parking spaces. You'll have to excuse my French. We want to park the weeds, but we don't want to end up pie in the sky. So we want to park this, avoid this, and never lose sight of this, and that's the big picture. So with that introduction.
Is there any significance that two of them have eyebrows and the other one doesn't?
Oh, goodness.
I'm just a man about details, that's all.
See? There wasn't. He just didn't get his eyebrows, or she. They weren't assigned genders. Okay. All right, now let's start and talk about what components we would like in the plan. And RWR's plan has more components to it, so why don't we start with that and see what we want to include. They have a mission and vision, an overall goal, and then they did a SWOT analysis before they got into developing objectives and strategies. What we did was we started with, we called it categories, but it would really be objectives. So it would be, down toward the end of their report, and our main categories were master plan, fiscal performance, asset management, accountability, oversight of initiatives, governance, communications, and then sustained progress. So that's basically where we started. You could call those the overall objectives. And a question came up, I think Daryl in particular brought up, should we back up and start with mission and vision statements and do a SWOT analysis. So I was going to throw that out to the
I think
board to see.
the mission and the vision and mission and goals are probably, the goals may not be exactly the same, but the mission and vision are basically the same. Well, ours is
No.
more associated with fiscal responsibility.
Yeah, I mean, they're really not the same.
Not the
That's
same.
actually the reason for a separate one. Now,
But
you know,
that
whether
takes a long time, a lot of
it
times.
takes a long time, and what I was going to suggest, if we wanted to do it, was to absolutely not wordsmith it today.
Okay.
To just brainstorm some key concepts,
Okay.
and then I'll take the initiative to come back with maybe some proposed statements that incorporate those comments, and then we can worry about how we word it,
Okay.
if we want to have those components in there. The SWOT will take some time, but we've allotted 4 hours, so. And I kind of think a SWOT's not a bad idea.
No, I think after we've gone through what the RWR SWOT was, I think it is a good idea to
Yeah.
look at strengths and weaknesses.
Okay, so we definitely want to do a SWOT then. What about, do you want to have a mission and vision? Or you don't really think it's particularly?
If you all could define that, I think it would probably go a long ways toward guiding the overall purpose on it. And
What do you all think?
Well, I think every organization has to have a mission statement and a vision statement.
Okay.
Okay.
That's,
Starts the ball rolling in the right direction.
that keeps everybody focused.
He broke out a overall goal of above the objectives, and we have objectives and action plan, actually.
Yeah, we have to actually.
Which I think do we need a,
It's almost as if our action plan is sort of goal.
well, our action plan, our action plan is really one step further than I think RWR's didn't go it quite as far. Theirs started earlier and ours finished later. Well, why don't we put it down? We can play with some concepts and.
I mean, to me, the goal of the is to make sure that the utility and the contractor of the utility is managed in a cost-effective.
Okay. Hold it for just a second. Let's finish and we'll get to goal.
Okay.
I think you're right. All right, so.
Collect enough money to keep it good repair.
All right, so then, and then our processes are about the same. He's got objective/strategy. We've got categories issues, but we could call it objectives and strategy just to make them comparable.
Okay.
And we can always change the terminology, by the way. We don't have to get hung up on the terminology.
Well, the two plans are going to work side by side, so the more similar in wording and definition that you use in most of the plans, the way you structure the strategic plan is going to make correlation to the other one a whole lot easier
Yeah, that's
and understandable.
That's a very good point. And then we have the extra step of the annual progress or the work plan. For WSA, and I think we're pretty committed to that. Okay, so if those are going to be our components, and I'll just put this down on
Do that.
Was it sticky?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, and I even brought tape, this is great. Okay, so what we want to do is, it's funny, he started with vision. I'd like to start with mission, and I'll tell you why. I mean, you can have a vision to fly to the moon, but it's got to be based on what your mission is. So, let's just talk about mission, and without trying to wordsmith it, let's just get down some concepts of what we think the mission of the WSA is.
Fiduciary.
And by the way, I want everybody to know that a sign of creativity is how many different ways you can spell the same word. I think that one's
Phonetics is on.
I think that one's right, but as we get down here, I can't promise. Okay, so we have fiduciary responsibility.
And a responsibility to the ratepayers and bond holders. To make sure that the money that is collected is wisely used.
Yeah, that's part of fiduciary.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think a little broader from the standpoint, if we back up to the actual utilities itself, from the standpoint of, one of the things that the Water and Sewer Authority wants to do in conjunction, the same as we wanted to do, is to make sure that we have the sustainability of these, of our utility supplies. We want to make sure that we don't run out of water and we don't run out of wastewater. We want to be able to sustain the services. Would you say that that's not?
Yes, it is, but sustainability may mean that, well, that you utilize the limited facilities as efficiently as possible, because water is a limited quantity. It's a limited resource. Wastewater capacity is a limited resource. It is not infinite.
Okay, so without going into the details, you want to say resource protection?
Resource protection.
Where do the words planning for their future fit into? And there's sustainability or separate? Making sure that you're planning.
Yes.
What we're doing here today is continued.
Right.
Joint planning efforts.
That's a good point.
Joint
One
planning.
plan.
Yeah,
Joint
joint
planning.
planning.
And I'm going to put oversight.
Yes.
And, okay.
I don't know if this falls under the mission or a goal, but I really believe that the responsibility of this board is to have ample water and sewer resources for the residents of Rockdale County. Some people have in mind that water is a resource that's owned by anybody and everybody, and when the big guy comes along and he needs water, he can grab yours. I think part of the mission of Rockdale should be to protect the water resources here for Rockdale County residents.
Okay. Resource protection
Okay.
for residents.
Well, and that's a little bit different than what you were saying. You were saying more for ecology.
No, not so much for ecology, but to understand that they're both limited resources.
Yeah, well,
In other words, you can't grow to the sky and suck up somebody else's water necessarily. And that's particularly applicable to wastewater too.
isn't that an ecology
There
issue?
is a river that runs through that has so much waste load and assimilation that will be divided up amongst the users. And that may not give you the ability to infinitely use it. I mean, there are
For infinite growth. You
There's
can't
the-
have
infinite growth is
Okay.
Part of that
How
resource
about
protection.
then planning for growth
Yes.
we've got
or economic development? Or it's not really a mission, but
I think part of that resource.
well, the reason I said ecology is part of the resource protection is protecting it environmentally and protecting its quality, maybe quality.
Well, part of the resource protection is also going to be protecting it politically. We're in these basin,
Right.
this whole statewide basin transfers and basin coordination is going to fit in with resource protection. Whether what we do here is going to affect other basins and other counties. So that resource protection has got to be politically protected also.
That's
That's it.
Yeah, just like we're trying to do with the cow.
On that board for
Yeah.
nothing.
Yeah.
It's just like we're trying to do with the cow. In other words, if you're going to build a sewer tunnel and store sewage in a tunnel that goes through an aquifer that we need to use, then you need to release for the
Right.
wells.
Ain't gonna happen on my watch, I can tell you that.
Okay, let's say this, we don't have to, I mean, we can go on to another aspect of it, and then as we're talking, realize that goes under mission and come back to it. But since we're starting to get a little bit down into details, we think we've got the big concepts for mission? I kind of think we do.
How about to continually find new resources of, water supply, so that for the future, to make sure, because you can go into a deep drought, and if you don't have more water sources.
But that boils back down to protecting, you name the resources, you protect aquifers, because we don't have any idea anymore, there's been no study There was one 13 million or 10 million was proposed by some guy at Georgia Tech.
Well, I tell you what, why don't we
Protect the
Here
resources.
goes, I'm gonna call you on weeds. But what we're talking about is identifying resources to be protected.
Right.
Well, there's things that we don't have yet, so you need to find new sources of water.
They're not any new sources of water.
Well, they might be outside of Rockdale County.
Well,
Then they're gonna be politically protected too, though.
Not necessarily.
Transfer element.
right, there goes the interbasin transfer out. Because
Well, I think identifying,
Maybe.
look, I don't think we need to go to that level of detail. Identifying resources is part of protecting resources, whether that be new ones or,
because there are times when we've got interconnection agreements, just like recently we had to buy some water from Gwinnett
We did.
right.
because we had a problem.
What about service, if you just say maybe service and supply, sustainability of service and supply? Those, the supply, I think, is under what you were talking about. You wanted to ensure that.
That brings in the infrastructure element too.
Yes, well, the infrastructure is under the ability to serve. And the
That's true.
supply is your water and your rivers and streams.
Your rivers and streams.
Well, I do think infrastructure maintenance or infrastructure protection is or infrastructure, why don't we say asset?
Asset
protection.
Asset.
Asset protection.
Asset management?
Or asset management. Because that's a different thing.
Actually, as owners of the assets, that's definitely something that we have a responsibility to bondholders and ratepayers.
Right.
Well, do you really want to say asset management or asset protection?
Because we don't manage the
You don't
assets.
actually manage assets.
Yeah, that's right.
But you certainly want to make sure that they're protected. And,
Which means fix it.
fix it, absolutely. And making the public aware.
Which
that
means-
the
which
rights,
means,
the education.
Which means that we require asset management. How about that?
Right. It does mean that we require asset management and have them all listed.
And you acquire the assets also as a board.
Yes, we do.
We own them. We are the owners of assets. That means the pipes.
Asset acquisition.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, we hold, or do we actually sell the bonds, or does the county sell the bonds?
And no, since we're the owners of the debt, we will sell them.
Quick hands.
Okay, so we have a mission around the bond market,
Well, again, that goes back to fiduciary responsibility.
it does, but it's also financing the assets is a little bit different. Financing assets.
Financing assets. That would be wastewater plants and things like that.
Okay, and some of these probably can be combined, but. Are y'all ready to talk about vision?
What was the last one, Phyllis?
Financing assets.
Okay, so that's I think, that's critical when you look at it from the standpoint of the mission. That's how the money is made available to the county and for RWR is by way of the authority.
Oh, yeah, by the way, the authority is because we're the owner of the debt.
Yeah, you know what I do? They can go beside it, but just physically know it. That's part of that. Okay, vision. So we consider that we have fiduciary responsibility for the system, that we are concerned with sustaining the assets and services and supply, resource protection,
Joint planning with RWR and the planning commission.
owning
With, really,
and the county.
yeah, RWR
I'd
and
like, I think including the, I knew that wasn't gonna hold. Economic development, RM2, can almost be.
yeah,
taught in that.
that's one of the groups that we need to
Here's somebody who comes.
be talking to.
Concrete walls just do not like Post-it notes.
Okay, so what is our vision, in terms of those things that we will, what RWR wrote is RWR is in the utility services business, providing primary services in water, wastewater supply and treatment. And will position itself to be the best in its utility class by optimizing services and resources. Well, see, ours would be totally different from that.
Right, it would be
That's
totally different than that.
Now,
Operating.
what are you reading from? The one I'm looking at is one short sentence.
Yeah,
2013.
division.
Vision, right at the top.
Just
Oh,
RWR.
I'm sorry, I crossed over the mission.
Yeah.
So,
WR's vision, our
yeah,
vision.
I would say that our vision is to,
Is fiduciary and planning.
well, but
You got to look out further than that.
yeah, I agree, because I think our vision is that we have a system whose assets are fully, managed, not that we manage it, but our vision is that the assets are, well managed and maintained, and that we maintain revenue sufficient to repair and maintain and acquire assets as needed to provide for RWR to provide the services.
I think you got to back up though and think in terms of water and sewer authority. Because right now you're not generating any revenue. So when you look at it from the way the water and sewer authority is currently structured, what do you all see yourselves as doing? What is the vision? What's your, it's almost like a long-term purpose. Where do you see us, where do you see the organization?
Well, we need, I mean, when you look at the fiduciary responsibility, we need to be able to get A bond ratings, if you want to look at that. We need to be in a position to,
Provide the best resources available for the users of water and sewer in Rockdale County.
You all are
Part of it.
basically a organization of public individuals. Do you all see yourselves as one day being able to operate the utility itself?
Okay, yes, you're looking at, maybe one of our vision ought to be that because of, if you have individuals that live in the county, hopefully those individuals have spent a good bit of time paying attention to water and sewer resources. And that's where your real institutional memory lies. That's where the continuity of the system, because you can have staff that come from outside the system who doesn't know the county. And it takes a while for them to.
where are you going in terms of
So,
vision?
vision would be having a group of, I mean, instead of run by politicians, having the authority run the system.
You're basically an authority without a utility. But do you see yourselves as being able one day to actually, this board being composed with, I understand where you're going, with a knowledge base that has the capability, although you're not doing it now, but you have the capability to actually provide the
Well,
But we would hire people that would run the system.
Well,
system.
right,
But your governing board would be sufficient to be able to, what do you say, provide the, what do you call it?
yeah, you know what, the reason I think that's critical is because we have a lease contract and it has an expiration date.
Right.
And
That's a good point.
it is likely to be, renewed, but it's not guaranteed to be renewed. So if you look at our enabling legislation, we need to be prepared to, but also I think what you're saying is, institutional or,
Well, it provides, we need to make sure that.
well, I think we can say operate if necessary,
Yeah.
just as a starting point. I mean, we don't have
Because
to
we
place it.
would, I mean, you would have to have a utility operate, vision, long-term vision might be to operate, either operations, combine operations and, planning. In other words,
Combine the two words, operational direction.
Okay, I like that.
yeah, operational direction. Because
I like that.
most authorities have professional staff.
Yes.
But they do have.
And you all are
individuals,
looking at it.
And you're the policy.
Yeah, you'd still have to have a staff underneath.
Of course.
So you're not looking at
But
going
we're still
there.
not looking at the detail, we're not looking at the
Given
weeds of
them the
operation.
tools to do it properly, that would come under the operational direction.
Yeah, I think operational direction is a good way to do it.
Yeah.
That would combine with the fiduciary responsibilities, or obtaining A bond ratings, those kinds of things.
I'm gonna say ensure assets are maintained. I think,
Well,
So that's where that word asset management comes back in?
well, yeah, but we don't actually manage them, but I think our vision is to ensure that they are adequately managed, which we don't.
It probably would be.
I don't like the word adequately. I think our goals should
Our
always
vision
be
is, yeah.
to have the best,
Yes.
not just adequate.
And
Yeah.
that includes, don't ever forget that if as the owner of, say, the reservoir, that reservoir might often have a price that somebody might want to sell it to. If they was going to sell it to the private sector. Because you've got to have, I mean, we own a resource that provides the water. And even though it doesn't have we don't have a price on that, it, believe me, has a price. And to own the resource means that you've got to be much more involved in the protection of the resource than, well, again, to go back to say the Chattahoochee versus us, the Chattahoochee is politically protected.
Okay, how about this? Ensure outstanding asset and resource management / protection.
Is there a vision, like you take the EMCs, they're ratepayer owned and operated. Is there a vision here that this board should be made up of ratepayers? Because a lot of people in the county are not ratepayers to the Water and Sewer Authority. And that ratepayers would serve on this water authority.
It's actually outside of our scope simply because our enabling legislation says that the county is charged with.
Yes, but you can always, the legislation is broad. You have the ability to define it and scope it and zero in on it.
It is basically.
you don't-
Actually, let me mention this. We actually don't, and I'll tell you why. We've been through this with our attorney, and he says we cannot grant ourselves any powers that are not granted to us by the enabling legislation. So if we had a vision that said only ratepayers are going to be appointed to this board, we have absolutely no control over whether that's done or not.
Well,
We
it
have no
depends
say
on what
over-
the legislation currently says. If it says you have the ability to choose who's going to be, or the county commission has the ability to choose,
Right.
you can define a rule that says, and from that,
We
You
cannot, no, we
Goes back
cannot.
to the enabling.
Our attorneys have made it very clear, we cannot grant ourselves any powers whatsoever that the legislation didn't grant us.
Now, the one thing that it mentions.
We can, we really can.
The one thing that enabling legislation mentions, and we sort of have kept it in mind when you're, because I sort of keep my eye out for people that might be good people on the water and sewer authority, because they've got to have some passion for it, because it's a big role, is to try to get people from all parts of the county. And it does say good representation from the county. In other words, everybody doesn't live in Conyers, or everybody doesn't live in
Yeah,
the
but see
South
there,
Side.
again, we have, for that to be our vision, we would have to have, it's not even part of our scope.
So I guess, no,
I mean, I like it, I do, I like the idea of making that recommendation.
there are all sorts of iterations.
Although the flip side of that is people who don't have water and sewer service now, might feel like they should have representation.
I don't know why. They don't have a stake, they're not a stakeholder.
Yeah, they do have a stake.
Everybody
If they want
lives in this
With
county.
the possibility they may be tied in
Right.
5 years from now.
Right, they do
Everybody
have a
in
stake.
this
Guidance to where
county
that goes.
who lives here, even if they have a well and they're using that well and they could use water and they're not using water, and there's about 20% of the population is like that, they still have got to have a place for their septic tanks to go. And at this point in time, the septic tanks, the pumpage from that can go almost anywhere. But eventually, it's going to probably, the law is going to narrow it down to you have to take care of your own in your own county. And that means that you got to have the infrastructure in place to do that. And that means you're going to have to charge for it. So, and we have lines in a lot of cases almost all over the county now. And even in those lines, I'd say in Lorraine, where you've got people that have half-a-mile driveways that just say it's too expensive, eventually it will get to the point that they find somebody's going to, either the property's developed or that the line goes
There could
by.
come a time when people are required, well, not that we advocate that, but it could happen.
Yeah.
All right, well, let's move.
Let me, I was trying to remember the thought that I had on this. When you talk about vision, what value does the water and sewer authority bring to the public and to the county? And then how do you do that? That's, when you look at your vision, you're saying, we understand the value that we are, and we're going to, our vision is to promote this in a certain way. So when you look at that, you need to ask the question, what value does water and sewer authority bring to the
To
public?
me, to me personally, it would be these two things.
Yes.
But there could be other things, so I think it's a great way to look at it.
Yeah, it's great. One of the things that we bring to it all finally is that after 10 years, or 10 or 12 years of the county owning it, is that everybody's now aware that there is a lease.
Yes. So
And for
public,
years.
what do you call it? Public disclosure.
Public disclosure.
You bring that as, and this is, we're putting them up here. This may not necessarily be the vision, but it relates to compiling the vision statement. So you bring, what do we call it, public?
Education, I think.
Public disclosure and education.
Education.
And that's to the county, to the
Well,
officials and to the public.
you know, to his point though, about what value we would like to add, one that I would say would be to take politics out of
That's true.
the decision-making
In other
process.
words, we don't, every 2 or 4 years, we're not fixed on, okay, so-and-so's gotta get reelected, and they don't want a rate increase.
Right.
So to remove politics from rate making.
Well, I would
Not
be,
just rate making.
I will tell you that I think the founding fathers were very wise in the structure they built government. They made people accountable that were elected for a reason. And sometimes that process takes time. It gets aired out during elections. Better government comes as a result of it. So I'm not for removing the politics, because you can never remove the politics.
Well, but the thing, when we look at it though, Ed, your water resources is different and has to be managed differently from the general fund or other government sponsored programs. And sometimes politics step in, get in the way of operating a business. You know, this, the utility services, let's say like maintenance of the infrastructure, which we're facing now, needs to be, needs money, need a rate increase to maintain them. But the political will is not to do that. So,
Kick the can out.
But I think it's a mistake though to limit it to that. I think, you know, there are times when a lot of decisions get kicked down the road for politics, or, I mean, it's not.
There will
not
be people on the board that have been appointed by the politicians, and they're going to represent the politician's point of view on that board. Make no mistake about it. You cannot take politics out of any public authority. And so
I understand what he's saying.
The key too is going from December 31st to January 1st continuity. You know, if you've got a political quagmire that's going on from a change in regime,
Right.
what the authority is doing and what RWR is doing, you got to crack that faucet. It's got to work December 31st, and it's got to work
And
January
actually,
1st.
actually, I think the current commissioners would probably laugh at that we are beholden. Right now, they would probably say, "Oh, I wish." But okay, maybe what we're saying is not so much remove politics as have decisions be
Fact-based.
and have business considerations drive decisions.
Right.
That's not what I do when the county runs a business.
Or at least the enterprise.
Or at least the enterprise.
The enterprise.
The chief reason that, at least in Georgia and probably over the country, the politicians have been taken out of a good bit of running of water and sewer utilities is simply because they've hijacked the money. If there's a money they built up to fix things, because we have to look at the long term. I mean,
Oh, the city used to rob the
Well,
utility
utilities
line.
are not the only ones that have been hijacked over here.
Yeah, look at Social Security.
well,
Parks and
Well,
recreation, they all
that's
get
exactly
hijacked.
right, though, and so it's not.
But that can be controlled by legislation. If you feel that strong enough, you have to work with your local legislative delegation, put them on the hot seat and say, we need to protect the money
Okay, but
from
right now
being
we're
raided.
but right now, we're just dealing with their vision.
I know, but your
So
vision is,
if our vision is to have business considerations
I think
drive
that's a good way.
decisions,
Yeah, that's-
that might be a
that's,
method.
that's a
That
good way to
might be
say
a
it.
That's a good way to
Yes.
say it. Yes. Because it is a business and it's a long-term business, and if you
Yes.
don't plan for the future.
Absolutely.
And that means that the plans that you put in place,
Well, yeah,
you gotta
have
fund.
business needs from a value consider, or well, we don't have to wordsmith it right now. Okay.
I like it.
Okay. And these need to be broad, not, you know, because we got this funnel, we're
I
a
think-
funnel,
I think
we'll get
that's-
there, but right now we're,
That's good.
okay. that was
Right,
an
you see,
excellent,
that's got it
excellent,
encapsulated.
way to look
That's got
at
it
it.
encapsulated.
You know, I think what sometimes happens, you start talking about something else and you think, oh, that should be part of the vision, we can always go back and add it. Okay, the next thing we said was,
Goals or priorities?
well, the priorities really are
The objectives.
the way he did it. If we're gonna try to maintain a perfectly consistent structure, is he just had one goal, and it was based on his mission and vision. So, you know, maybe our overall goal would be to operate to have the system operate in a business-like manner and, well, business-like.
Now, remember, you're talking WSA.
Yeah,
WSA.
right.
It
Well-
might be the best thing we could do is, maybe the
But I
best-
mean, as far as oversight, that's really what, you know, from an oversight perspective, we want to,
An excellent bond rating means that you do have to have your finances in order.
yeah, and the A is not the top rating, isn't it? It's A,
Whatever your
Yeah.
population
Double A.
is.
yeah.
It's, I think it's a double A, the counties, it's a double A, ours would be less. That's why the county wraps its rating into that, and when it does that, the county commission doesn't realize that they make themselves responsible then if they don't run it right.
Well,
For raising taxes.
right, I don't think if you're boiling down to just one goal though, that obtaining the highest bond rating,
That sounds odd, yes.
you know, if we were gonna pick one thing again,
I was gonna say, I've come down to that. If we're gonna pick one thing, ensure outstanding asset
and resource management and
resource
protection.
management and protection.
Yeah.
Certainly sounds reasonable. Could I make a suggestion?
Yeah.
On this, you know, as we, what do you call it? As we brainstorm, when you get down, I think if, since we don't have all of the members here, could you brainstorm and have these there and then distill them down when you have maybe a bigger group? Because you want to have a limited amount of
Yeah,
input this morning.
and I think we will, and there again, getting back to that funnel, I mean, right now, we're, you know, when you're talking about vision, well, and actually, you have a good point about that. Even these, I mean, right now, this is like initial proposal, and unfortunately, we don't even have a quorum today, so we can't actually vote on these anyway. We're gonna have to submit these to the committee of the whole, even to get it voted. Because the committee, we decided was the committee of the whole. If we had made it smaller, if we had made it 3 people, I guess we would we could vote on a committee recommendation, but we can't even do that. All we can really do today is,
That's why I said you brainstorming. You get enough to get the group started, you know, and then it's easier. You've got the big funnel, and then when you get it down to the specifics where you all can vote on it, you have everybody present.
yeah,
They're
exactly.
gonna have to come up
Well,
to speed.
and
You all can
even
work with
these, they're gonna have to come back and vote on. I
Yes.
mean, we can't even say they're the committee recommendation today just because we don't have a quorum.
What they can do is watch the meeting at home so that they're prepared the next time that they
That's
come
a
in
good idea.
with all their notes already, so your meeting won't drag out for 4 hours and
Right.
rehash everything you've done today.
Yeah, we definitely don't want to have to rehash it. Okay,
if you put it up or
we can
whatever,
come back
then I'll
to
let
this.
them know and say, you're gonna have to watch this.
You can send the next week.
Yeah, or you can send a link to.
Yeah, or, right. Okay. Now, the part that will take a lot of time, our strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and strengths, and threats. I really do wish everybody was here. We might actually want to go through this. We might want to just add to this process on the next occasion. But starting with strengths, and considering we're talking about WSA.
Strengths is, I think it's a knowledgeable,
That's
a knowledgeable group of authority members,
Yeah,
citizens.
authority members.
Knowledge diversity.
Yeah.
Mhm.
oh, knowledge diversity and knowledgeable members.
It's composed of stakeholders.
Yeah, it is composed of stakeholders.
Sometimes the word stakeholders gets overused. It fits here.
It does fit.
I think it fits, but I sometimes think the word stakeholder.
Yeah.
Oh,
It does. It ends up meaning everybody, yeah. Like Florida, they're stakeholders, I mean, it does, but I think you're right. It fits in this.
I think it's a little overused.
Yeah. Actually, for what it's worth, I think we are all ratepayers, aren't we?
Yep. I mean, we have leads like everybody else. We have,
Yeah.
we have meters that don't read like everybody else.
Well, for right now,
We have, I mean, as a ratepayer, we experience the same thing that the ordinary ratepayer.
that's where that goes. That's a strength.
Well, the reason why I asked that before was because at a meeting about a year ago, I asked how many people, raise your hand on the authority, how many people actually were ratepayers?
Everybody.
And how many of those actually paid on both water and sewer? And the hands went down
Right.
significantly when you combine having to pay water and sewer.
Okay, what are some more of our strengths? I would say we're very passionate about, you know,
You
This is-
bring the historical, not only
Yes.
ratepayers, but you have a historical base of knowledge.
I would say, yeah. Like Fred Russ said, if you don't know where you've been, you don't know where you're going.
yeah.
You know, and
Historical knowledge.
Yeah, and
you always want to
and that's part
sort
of
of
that
have
knowledge.
a historian as a member of the water and sewer authority, because let's say like Elaine knows where the organization has been, some of the problems, some of the contacts with other counties and other state agencies. That's important. You want to keep yourself at the forefront in protecting your
Those were the bodies of buried.
Well,
Yes.
and just odd, I mean, we run across a subdivision that may have part of it's sewer, part of it's not. Maybe an opportunity to finish sewer and part of it because it never was, but I mean, I remember, I mean, that kind of stuff, you don't know. It's not in the records, so to speak.
It's a historical knowledge base.
Yeah, historical. That goes under the knowledge. I would say that it's something about our commitment and dedication to the system, because I think that is a strength of this authority. I've been on boards before where maybe one or two people do any amount of.
We have, I mean, because of the diversity on the board, we have a surprising amount of ability to research various pieces of all the things that come before us.
Well,
I think that the board itself has been reconstituted as a testament to the, the desire to do it right.
yeah, I would just say commitment is one of our strengths. People tend to take what time is needed and learn what's needed.
And one of the strengths, I think, that's good about the authority is if we don't, since we don't deal with operations much, it lets us look broader and lets us pay attention to planning issues, bigger issues,
Different
how we
perspective.
integrate in with the rest of the community.
Different perspective, totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, so different perspective, it's not, you don't get the tunnel vision from the operations. You're able to look at it on
Right.
a wide basis.
Okay, what have we done really well? You know, it's funny, there was a time I would say that teamwork and collaboration, I think it's been a weakness lately, but
Well, we got a rate increase that has allowed us to at least have enough money.
Get ourselves out of the hole.
I mean, not go bankrupt.
Yeah, that's exactly right. That's
Because
what we
we've
were
had
headed.
two issues, I mean, that have dealt with water supply, where motors that have been in the ground for 10 years or 12 years are all wearing out at the same time. And,
well, yeah, without,
and we've collected enough money so that we can at least replace them.
so I would say strength is ability to,
I think the collaboration between the utility and the authority enabled a rate increase.
it did.
That kept us out of bankruptcy.
But I think it was attributed to the ability of the authority to relate more to the public than
Yeah,
the
I
professionals.
think it was too.
You're always there and not being paid.
So,
We're here because we're being paid.
right.
So, you know, there's a difference there. You know, the public saw you as being committed. And I know when we went through the public presentations, there were some questions that were answered by the authority because they related more to the public's perception. You were able to present a public's perception as opposed to the utility or RWR's perception.
Well, public perspective.
Yeah, that's very well stated. Bring the public perception. That is.
Now, and I have to say that, we did, I would say, you could say, as an accomplishment, that yes, we came in and avoided the bankruptcy. I would say that's an accomplishment. Strengths, I kind of look at is not just one thing that happened, but
Right,
just,
right. It's,
yeah.
I agree.
But I agree that was a
Well,
huge
we
accomplishment.
also have been, we have worked collaboratively and starting to look at each of the operations to a degree, sort of the financial piece of several of the operations, because the septic thing was the second really big issue we had to tackle. And we didn't.
Yeah, and that probably goes under big picture perspective. I think it does. And the big picture perspective, I think you can't understate the importance because it is so easy to get, it's actually necessary to get caught up in the day-to-day operations. It's absolutely necessary to. And then somebody needs to stop back and say, oh.
And that was actually what happened with the septic thing, was
Yeah.
that nobody had thought that
That's
the
true.
mechanism to solve it was raising the rates.
The thing that
And Boy did it.
Uh,
Boy did it, totally solved it.
Money talks and.
Well, it solved it temporarily, now everybody else is
the
feeling
staff
it's
had
solved.
been measuring the buildup, and this is what we've got to do to fix this, and it had it just not occurred to anybody, well, charging enough. Then you looked at what the other surrounding places were charging, and we were so under it. Of course, everybody was coming here.
Okay, look, advocates, we're advocates.
Right. The thing that I see on the strengths is all of your strengths have to be related to individuals, because the board, on its own accord, you don't bring money there on your own accord. You bring, it's what each individual has to bring that makes you a strong water and sewer authority. So if you don't put strong members on there, you're going to have a weak
That's very true.
WSA. So you have to recognize that the strength is within the people that are placed on.
Should I say mostly strong members?
I think to what you're saying, to make sure that influential citizens and ratepayers are recruited. For instance, when SPLOST comes up again, it's been my belief for a long time that water and sewer it's the primary engine that attracts industry and business with education.
Yeah.
And then the third thing in a study I saw shows that top corporations only come to an area that has ample education, water, sewer, and then the next thing is actually for the executives to relocate that good quality of life for their families. So parks and recreation and shopping and things like that.
Which doesn't really talk
And you know what?
So to have that, it all starts at water and sewer.
It does.
And so to have the SPLOST next time, your job and your mission
And
is
I wonder if we should, well, let me just go ahead.
to influence that, just let me finish my thought, to influence that so that enough money is taken from SPLOST in the next go-round to make sure that the leaky water pipes and the meters that you need and all the things that you need, the backup reservoir, whatever it is that you need, are all included in that for the next 30-year plan.
Ed, you're quite right, and it really does not start with transportation. It starts with water and sewer.
Yep. Under the ground first.
If you look at Burnett, that's where they aim to start with. Cobb County, the same way. Fayette County, the same way, was to get their water and sewer system going and intact and left alone and run well. Even Clayton County, the same thing. In other words, they were way out in front on a lot of things. So it's been those areas, and some of them have bad potholes like everything else, but they made sure that the water and sewer systems were well financed and well run.
Well, you know what, I put it as an opportunity, and I think some of what we talked about was accomplishments, maybe more than strengths, but I will say this because it was a long-term thing. I think the fact that we were fully responsible for getting water and sewer in this place
Yes, we were.
is a strength.
Well, that was an accomplishment, though.
It was. It was. A lot of the things we're talking about.
Well, we were talking about the
Well,
people
you know
of
what,
influence
strength-
on
why don't
the
we
board.
say, a strength was,
Strength is.
what
You
a
still got
strength
it.
is, accomplishing,
Strength is your contacts.
yeah.
You know, you all.
Well,
What you're trying to say is the strength was that this board had the ability to get $15 million from the
Right.
SPLOST,
ability to,
influence the SPLOST committee.
Yeah,
Well,
and actually the public was
it
quite
was-
happy
Yeah,
to vote for
I
it.
no, it was, but its ability to,
Seize opportunities.
Foresight.
well, foresight's a good strength.
Yeah, foresight.
But I like that term of influence, because without being influential, we don't get the support that we need for
Right.
certain things. someone else gets the money
Right.
instead of us getting the money. So I think you know.
Just like any corporate board wants to have people of influence on their
influence
board.
on it.
Or charitable organization, always looking for people of influence.
Ability to influence resource, or ability to gain resource support, or,
Well, you need first to be able to see the opportunity that you need to go out there and get it.
yeah.
And then,
Put the word opportunity.
But that's part of vision. That's part of your vision.
Foresight.
I think
Yeah.
a lot of us see it, but being able to see it and being able to get it,
get it.
Yeah,
two different things.
right, so the ability to, obtain financial support, really, I think it's, yeah.
Well, that ability to influence, I think,
It's
is
important.
By itself.
by itself.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And that almost has to boil back down to a group of citizens rather than just hired staff,
Right.
because they're viewed in a different way.
Absolutely. I come in and say, I need a 5 million gallon water storage tank. And so, you know what he's talking about, you know, he just wants more money. What do they call it? When one person asks for it, they say he's empire building. You know, he wants to create a
Empire.
structure, yeah, empire, you know, he doesn't really need that tank, you know, but, you know, when the public gets behind it, yes, we do. You know, we want that tank for fire protection, we want that tank for drought protection, we want that tank to ensure.
For breakdowns.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so I do think the strength is that we are able to obtain financial resources that wouldn't otherwise be available.
Mhm.
So we've shown that a few times.
Yes, yes, definitely a strength. I think,
yeah.
of the board.
Okay, there again, you know, sometimes, especially in a slot, you'll start talking about an opportunity and you'll realize it's a strength, or, weakness, and you'll realize, oh yeah, but the strength is, so this doesn't mean that sheet is complete, but weakness.
Banking for the future.
Excellent.
Banking for the future?
Yes.
Dredging, that's the example I'm coming up with.
Yeah,
The money was not put back soon enough
yeah,
to pay for that, and that's
Right.
the weakness. Anything in the future needs to be thought of now so that you can bank for it.
so a weakness you're saying was failure to, oh,
Banking for the,
Inability to bank for the future is a
you know,
weakness.
Creating the ability to bank for the future, or just banking for the future.
Well, it's got to be put
Funding.
into, you got
Future
to,
funding for
it's got to be
repairs.
put into a plan,
Yeah,
and then it's got to be put into a financial plan.
well, that's what this is, a strategic plan.
Plan is,
You know, figure out how to put that money aside for 10 years from now when we got a dredge again.
but actually, I agree, that has been, probably #1 weakness. You know, either the money gets rated when it's there,
Mhm.
it doesn't get in the, didn't get in the accounts it was supposed to, wasn't necessarily all, but also, I mean, you know, that gets into the asset management too. You know, if you know that you got a shelf life of this and a cost of this, you gotta bank that money
well,
to manage your
and
assets.
again, going back to how, getting the lease set up properly and the bank account set up properly and the staff being even to tell how much did what we collect go into the bank.
Yeah, and
Into
actually
the
that,
proper accounts.
you could add that to one of, yeah, it's, ours is oversight of that, but inability to bank for the future is huge, I agree, that's huge. I would say that weakness is, we've been fragmented, or maybe that's not the word, we've been,
Well, there's so many problems that we just,
contentiousness, or, what's the word I'm trying to say? We didn't start off there, but
No,
that's,
you didn't.
but that's where.
Misdirected focus.
That's
That's a problem.
yeah.
Can I just say that you don't, I don't think you want a board that everybody thinks the same.
No, I don't either, that's why
I think contention brings about, in the end, you have to go through the fire in order to get the silver. So I think if it's done respectfully,
That's what I'm
That's
trying
the
to say.
key.
and you have decorum at a meeting, and I think keeping decorum has been a weakness.
Lack of
From-
decorum.
Lack of decorum is excellent, yes.
That's what I was trying to get at, because you're right, I don't think you want unanimity of opinion, you only need one.
Right.
And I've had, as Tiffany has gotten in, I finally talked to Miss Herman, but I've had a lady that has called me, that I've talked to a couple of times, and she just thinks that the lack of decorum and respect for staff or each other is just, it needs to end. And we need to figure out a way to stop it. Yes, it's slow to stay.
I think, we started to write down lack of focus. I mean, sometimes we have, but
Misdirected focus.
misdirected focus, yeah.
And I think that comes from a lack of a mission statement and a vision statement, and you can always go back to that once you have developed it.
It can go either way. So I look at it from the standpoint of political appointments. But I think that one of the weaknesses is the fact that you're only limited to 2 terms. You know, if you want to maintain continuity sometimes, and I know you want to bring new blood on, but the fact that you get an excellent individual who may be able to do more than just 2 terms, that person's lost. So, you know, the fact that you're term limited becomes a weakness because we can't ensure continuity of the members beyond 2 terms. You know?
Well,
Well,
it's
the
6
authority
years.
should have continuity. The authority and actually lack of continuity, because Lord knows they went years without any appointments.
Sure.
That's been a weakness. But I think the fact that the terms overlap should
Well, that was
count to the
my
continuity.
question. Do they overlap
Yeah.
like planning?
Are they staggered?
They are.
They're
staggered.
staggered. They're staggered.
But the maximum that you can serve
It's 2
2
terms.
terms.
Yeah.
Which is 6 years.
Which is 6
Well,
years.
how are they staggered if the board was just reconstituted?
Because their first terms, they're 3-year terms, but some of us have filled unfulfilled terms, so some of us were appointed for just 1 year, some of us were
2
appointed
years.
for 2 years, for our first term.
So,
And then they all became 3-year terms.
so some of them actually started when the appointment made, but some were just filling
Old,
That's
right,
correct, the old-
and they'll
old
be
The old
able to serve.
staggered.
Right,
They'll
unfulfilled
be able to
terms.
serve
So-
8, 7, or either 8, 7, or 8 years.
So somebody who served 2 years and 9 months of an unfulfilled 3-year term gets another 6 years.
Yes.
I have a hard time with that being a weakness, because I think, be careful what you ask for, it could be a weakness on the other side if you didn't. Then you really would have,
Well, that's why I was saying, you know,
you really would have political, you really would have, members, Cowtown to political,
That's true. That's why I said it could go either way.
yeah.
You could either ride a winner for 10 years, or you could be stuck with someone who's politically pandering,
Well,
just so they can stay
what,
there.
I think we can safely put down continuity anyway, because there hasn't been. And given that we have staggered, I mean, term limits, we need to make sure we fix any problems with continuity.
Yeah, and I think that continuity is a good way to address it. You don't necessarily have to stay beyond the 2 terms, but from the standpoint of ensuring that the members bring certain talents to the board. You don't want to lose a talent. Not so much the individual, but let's say if you've got a financial person and a legal person and some from the industry, you know, then when they're reappointed, you want to make sure that you keep someone from those particular professions on your board,
Right.
as opposed to just lining them up with people who have really no business skills at all.
They are just, yes.
Potential,
Right.
You see what I'm saying?
no adopted master plan. In fact, that's what we're doing here. Somehow maybe incorporate the master plan, lack thereof.
In other words, at this point in time, it is no adopted master plan, because the master plan fits in with the land use plan, and then once that's sort of set, then you know what you got to do. Operations knows then what they got to do.
But,
There's
Tom, I think we
frequently-
come in a little differently here, because the master plan is basically our plan for managing and obtaining assets. And when we look at the Water and Sewer Authority, from that standpoint, they wouldn't have a master plan for obtaining assets, but they would, from the standpoint, when I look at it, in what do you call it, your overall, what's it,
We involved many
your
more elements
updated-
of the community
Mhm.
in the master planning process.
Well,
Continuity with the master plan can still be considered on this side of it.
Well, yeah, but when I look at it, I think the fact that the biggest weakness that I saw, that you all addressed it now, but it was the outdated, what was it, your outdated, what are you revising, your guidance documents, your, when you went
Bylaws.
through your bylaws. Your bylaws were so outdated, they hadn't been updated since, the organization was created. They were totally outdated. So they definitely was a weakness.
Yes, that was a big weakness that we're correcting now.
Right, it's been addressed.
And
Is it like
really
the- is it like the
communications channel, between RWR, the task force report sort of helped us solve that too, is the communications channel, once the Board of Commissioners eventually adopts that, and hopefully they will adopt it, then the communications channel will be sort of pretty well established too, as to how this board reports to the RWR director and the Board of Commissioners. Instead of to just the chair,
Joe.
because the Board of Commissioners,
Communicate.
we got three commissioners.
The word communication
Oh.
should be part of there.
Communication channels?
Yeah.
Yeah, communication channel.
And once we get that task force report in front of the Board of Commissioners, then
Make the channel plurals, yeah.
yeah, communications channels.
What about, from the standpoint, I think one of the biggest weaknesses that I see for the Water and Sewer Authority is there's really no funding mechanism.
Well, Chip is supposed to put in the RWR budget a small amount. Now, we don't need to, at this point in time, probably waste money for paying us, but we do need a small amount so that we don't sometimes overload the staff to be able to hire somebody to do committee reports and things like that without.
Travel expenses, does that ever come into play?
So far, it hasn't. We just take it out of our pocket at this point in time.
Well, I mean, that comes under the no funding.
Right.
I mean, we do pay a lot out of pocket.
And we do, I think we were gonna try to get, I talked to Michelle about it, but I guess it's Tiffany, and Chip is supposed to, at the next finance committee meeting, at least put in maybe $25,000 or $50,000 for the Water and Sewer Authority in the budget somewhere.
Okay, well, that's an opportunity.
Yeah,
Maybe we can write that down.
because we intend to get some money, even a small amount, to pay a staff, pay somebody to type up our reports instead of, say, because of the new open records law too, because reports you have to have many more reports now than you used to have.
And from the legal standpoint too.
And from the legal
Yeah, you
standpoint.
need some money for that.
Yeah, and from the legal standpoint, so, those two things.
Okay, so no funding is a weakness You know, this kind of goes under the no funding, but, we do use an awful lot of staff resources.
Yes, we do.
Is that measured in any way?
Probably not.
Probably not to the degree that I think we should be.
You might want to.
I think it just be a reallocation.
Well, I think if you, and I did this with a company I had everybody write down what they do for each
That's right.
job. That way you can measure the time that they spent working for this executive or that executive or whatever, and then that gives you an idea of how to budget for that individual.
It might be that you all could get Rosalind because you have a system in payroll to do that, don't you? And you obviously do it in engineering, because you have to. Because you assign your engineers to various tasks.
Yeah, and there's projects we've requested, resource allocation on too. I think most companies actually do that, but if it's a weakness, it would have to be on the RWR side, because we don't.
We don't have.
But I think it's something we were talking about.
Well, instead of required staff, why don't you have no staff?
Well,
Rather than
a
having
weakness is that we use,
that you have
no
no
staff.
staff.
No funding, no staff.
Okay.
No funding.
We do suck up time from Tiffany for doing other things. She has other jobs she has to do, aside from dealing with our minutes and recordings and things like that. And so that might be, it goes under a weakness on.
I will say that a weakness is, our meetings are way too long.
I agree.
Well,
Is that a weakness or a symptom of something else?
Well, we're beginning to take care of that, though.
It may be.
We're providing
I think
reports
so, too.
ahead of time. In other words, what we're trying to do is build into the monthly report an engineering report that literally goes over each project and where it is, so that we have the same sort of detail, and we don't need to even talk about it then, unless it's a problem. We know
You say it's in the report.
it's in the report. Read the report. Because our report has five pages.
Well,
5 pages.
I think it's that, so that's an opportunity maybe. But I think it's that, and I think it's it's a weakness, because it's an opportunity to improve. I think we easily get off task. I think
Well, I think you have working people, and it's a respect for time. So some of your board members can only stay a little while, or I think a weakness is not having meetings like in the evenings, so that more people can participate on your board.
Well, we started that and nobody came.
Yeah, we've done
We did that for a year and a half and
Really?
nobody came, and so we quit.
so
Because it cost even more with comp time and things like that. And it is filmed on 23, and people watch it. There are a good many people that watch it, that's for sure.
Well, these aren't filmed by 23.
Huh?
These are filmed by me.
No.
Yeah.
Work sessions are filmed by you.
And this is where the rubber meets the road, is at these meetings.
Usually.
they've been meeting the road in every meeting.
Dwight's got rubber tracks right over his back.
So sometimes we get off focus, and sometimes there's too much detail, which those reports can
Yeah, the
fluctuate
reports
this.
can take care of.
If members come prepared in advance, it'll
Yeah.
shorten your meeting.
Yes.
Because I see a lot of them reading the material for the first time while they're sitting there.
I cannot do anything about that.
That happens at the PLC too.
Yeah.
But we can identify it as a weakness.
Yes, it is a weakness that they don't read what they're sent.
and sometimes there's something in there that causes you to want to talk about it, and that's fine. But, you know, or causes you to want to put it on the agenda because it's something that needs to be discussed. But, yeah, I agree, if we're asking, you know, questions that we,
Why don't we take a short break and
okay,
get some fruit or nuts or whatever you want?
yeah, that's a good time.
And,
We'll take a break.
Camera's back on.
Okay.
Okay, we're ready, I guess, to start again.
We'll let them finish their
Okay.
conversation. We're ready to start now.
Okay, I'm gonna have to step back outside and do the business.
Okay.
So you all go ahead and get
Okay.
started.
Y'all got a problem?
Appointments, everybody wants to meet at the same time.
Oh,
Let's take a number.
Okay, we're back in session from our break. It's on, right? And for the record, I wrote down, because I didn't want to forget, a couple of additional weaknesses that we thought of. And one is we have damaged our reputation and credibility. And the other one is that we don't follow Robert's rules. And that probably could come under the meeting for too long.
yes.
Okay, opportunities, we came up with a couple of them while we were talking about either the strengths or weaknesses. One is an opportunity to gain support for future SPLOSTs. I should say another's funding. And we have an opportunity to have some funding for expenses and staff support and legal support that we haven't had in the past, because I think the county has expressed support for adding that to the budget.
Do you have opportunities to go to homeowners association meetings and actually meet face-to-face with ratepayers in their own subdivisions?
If they ask us, yeah, they can ask, I think.
There's nothing prohibiting you from doing that.
No, there isn't, but I think it's a good point. An opportunity is to,
And I think it's good if we go with staff. That's one of the things that, I think an opportunity of both staff and an authority member in any sort of educational effort, it's a good thing to have both there, because the perspectives and what they hear a lot of times may be different.
Taking advantage of Channel 23 is an opportunity.
well, I definitely think we have in general more opportunities for public education.
Yes, we have many opportunities, so we need to take advantage of
Yeah, I think
public
so.
opportunities.
And actually, these probably ought to fall under
Well,
that.
one of the things, the reasons for the master plan changing chairs is to line up a series of things that go around explaining the master plan to people, to the whole community, the planning commission, some vital people, the planning commission, the development authority, city council.
There needs to be a series of PSAs, period,
Right.
for lots of things, but especially in the water and sewer.
Yes, we need to be.
People need to
Yeah,
understand.
so I bucketed this under public education and some of the opportunities of meeting with stakeholders, taking advantage of the local meeting. Take advantage, that sounds terrible. I'll get back to that. News releases, website, public service announcements.
How about the schools?
Take advantage is perfectly
Well,
fine.
we actually do.
Yeah, it just has a double meaning. I mean it the nice one.
Also, one of the people that we need to explain the master plan to is the Board of Education too, because the location of schools.
They're a big user of water and sewer.
They're one of our biggest customers. They're in the top 10 customers.
Okay.
I would say partnerships certainly we need opportunities, hopefully getting the Big Haynes management plan back, meeting, or the Big Haynes management, we had a Big Haynes management plan, getting the stakeholders in that back together, or a technical committee meeting back together. That deals with.
So partnerships for
And
certain.
that's going to be something that I'm going to try to get done before my term is up, is to get that. I'm going to.
Partnerships on specific initiatives?
Yes, specific initiatives. And partnerships outside the county.
Continue to improve RWR relationship.
And that should include your state representatives and senators. And
Yeah,
if they're on the floor and something comes up and they're not knowledgeable,
they are.
then how are they going to represent your interest when they're there?
You know what, I wonder if we should have said that damaged relationship with RWR is a weakness. I think it is.
Yeah.
No, he left that? Or he left yet?
Oh, he's not.
He's
Can't
out.
leave me.
Oh, came with him.
He's just on the phone. I think.
I think it's just on the top.
Okay, we have our master plan and our rate study are both opportunities to,
Yes. Yeah, we've got to explain to the planning commission how this concept of just sewer districts that don't include everything might affect development.
We've gone into detail when I was on the planning commission. What is the wording or on the UDI for water and sewer? Is there any definitions or any?
I don't really think there is.
Definitions for what?
In the Unified Development
Code.
Code,
UDC.
UDC, UDI, UDC.
Why you think there needs to be?
I think it should be part of it. I mean, because anything, for future development's got to include water and sewer.
Well,
I don't know how it's addressed in the UDC
it's
though.
addressed probably, the way they practically address it is their meetings. They have a weekly meeting or a monthly meeting if there's development going on. And with plan reviews are reviewed together.
When I started the planning commission, all development tanked at that point.
Yeah, that's true. But I mean, do we need to, do you think that we need to interface more with UDC? Is that?
I don't, our ordinance code, what's going to affect them is changing, when we change, ordinances are changed. How we do business changes, then the ordinances will change, and that does.
It started with the planning commission.
Yeah. But as far as our overall master plan, Marshall Walker was involved.
Okay. So there is a piece
Oh, yes.
within that.
And actually,
Couldn't
we
remember what it was.
asked him about sewer districts so that we could actually have some figures to plan. And then it was Ken Asher who came up with the figures that we.
We're
did.
gonna have to park this unless it's an opportunity. Do you want, is there something we need to park or?
No.
Is there a member of your authority on the planning commission?
No.
No.
There should be an opportunity there to have the board make sure they
You
include.
can't.
Why?
You cannot serve on one, you're not supposed to serve more than one at a time. So somebody from the planning commission cannot serve on the water sewer authority, and water sewer, the other person cannot serve on the planning commission.
We just have to try to make sure that.
Well, there should be somebody to attend.
Well, you know what, I mean, there could be
Cooperation with and communication with
opportunities
is
to, maybe not just partnerships on specific initiatives, but
partnerships, well, actually, we need to really partner with the transportation department,
Why don't we say interface with other,
interface with other county.
is an opportunity?
Intra-county committees.
Interface.
Because, you see,
That's a good.
the SPOS has forced water and sewer and transportation to talk to each other. Before, they never talked to each other.
All right, so
And we've got
inter-county
a
interface.
looping of a line on Lake Creek Road that's going to have an intersection move, and the problem's going to be so far off, we're going to have to go in and loop the line anyway.
Okay,
And then we'll have to
but
move it.
identifying that as an opportunity could prompt us to actually assign, you know, where it's important, at least maybe assign a liaison. You know, let me know when we're, you know.
Or it could encourage the staff to, I mean,
Well, there's two
entities.
entities there. The board has to be represented and the staff should be represented. I mean, how can you leave the staff off who has all the knowledge base when you're doing a master plan about where things are gonna go if they don't know where water and sewer can actually run in the county in the future?
Exactly, and that's where the school board, I mean, us going to the school board and presenting the master plan is
Right.
extremely important.
Right.
And when it's
That's true.
us, I'm speaking of at least one authority member and staff being both there. Because it's
Okay,
going
we've
to
got
affect where schools are located for sure.
Okay, I thought of something, and then all right, we're on page 2 for opportunities, we filled up a page. I had something in my mind and I lost it, it'll come back, hopefully. What else, as far as opportunities? I think we have, an opportunity to rebuild our credibility.
Do you have a relationship with the Chamber of Commerce?
No.
That's another,
Fall.
I mean, when you're trying to do that SPOS thing, you need the support of the businesses in this community.
You could add that to the interface of inter-county and other
Yeah.
organizations like the chamber.
Yeah.
And we're probably going to have an opportunity, I mean,
And economic development, chamber and economic development.
I talked to Glenn Sears occasionally, but we need to go before, again, the master plan that needs to go to a development authority meeting, and I'm gonna get Bill to, or I'll be glad to call Mike Sullivan and just set up a time.
I think maybe a committee should be formed that their goal is to go meet during the course of the year and introduce the water authority to,
We really ought to meet with them once a year too.
Okay, additional, well, I think that interface, and maybe, we should add to interface based on this conversation, maybe it should say, assign liaisons, or appoint a liaison if possible. In other words, maybe one of us is a liaison to the Chamber of Commerce, and one of us is a member, and then we just talk to them, what's going on, you know, this is what we got going on, do we need to come to the meeting, is there opportunity to present, do you need to present to us, whatever. That would be a good option.
Well, the chamber is one of the people on the list to go
Yeah.
in the master plan too.
Yeah. Yeah, and the whole, not only is the master plan itself an opportunity for us to focus on what's needed for the future, but it's also an opportunity in terms of public education and support. Matter of fact, we probably ought to detail that.
There are at least 6 or 7 trips we need to make aside from, say, Rotary, the 2 Rotary those things.
All right, we have opportunities for bond funding occasionally. We mentioned spotless law. But we know that we're gonna need bond funding.
Is someone keeping an eye on available grants through the federal government or,
I think the staff pretty well does it.
Oh, yeah, I guess we wouldn't do it.
Yeah, because GFA is a major, and y'all they have communication with GFA on a regular basis.
Let's see.
I don't know if it would be the WSA's opportunity or RWR's opportunity.
What grants?
Well, now,
Grant.
what Henry County does.
Bottled water.
Yeah. I know you don't like it.
Well, it's.
Is that an RWR opportunity or?
It's an RWR opportunity as opposed to the authority.
Right.
But it's more involved than
Yes,
UCI.
it really is.
I think it should be
In fact,
private.
there's two laws that covered it in the state of Georgia.
Yes, distribution is the issue, and nobody will handle your distribution unless you're into large quantities of it. So we.
I was thinking more of a small quantity advertising for the authority itself. For the
You can get some labels, I mean, you can get some promotional balls made.
That's what I was thinking.
But I thought.
Not as a moneymaker.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
As an advertising piece to promote the fact that we've got cleanest water 2 years running.
Yeah, we could do
Even,
that.
I've always thought even at the BOC meeting, if they could have.
Mhm.
Rockdale water. Sitting up there as opposed to the signing.
Yeah.
Take off another label and put that, you know.
Okay.
Sidebar, sorry.
Okay, I think that we have started to try to document our policies and procedures
Yes.
better, whether that be with some. And part of that, I think what's important is facilitate continuity. And that gets into the area that we do have term limits and, you know, any progress that we've made in terms of structure or, you know, shouldn't be lost.
Right, just because.
Right.
Together how we operate.
Yeah. I mean, boards can always revise and modify if they need to.
Say, do this and do that.
Okay, opportunities, a weakness that we have had, but I think we can probably just call it an opportunity, is to, document and update. Why don't we say this? Because technically, we're supposed to review and modify our bylaws every 2 years, and we haven't.
Right, that's right.
So we have.
Document and update.
And update policies and procedures is an opportunity. That really needs to be done. We are supposed to and haven't, so we can call it an opportunity. Give the county an annual,
The task force, an annual report of their compliance with the lease.
right. Yeah.
How did you say that?
Annual report on compliance with the lease.
Yes, I definitely think that's an opportunity, and I definitely think that would be a worthwhile publication for you all to do. I mean, how does Tydetton County do in terms of compliance?
Yeah. And we need to have, you know, good and bad there, but there is one little place where they're not in compliance, and we do need to say that. And provide that documentation. We've got the communication with state stakeholders, updated policies and procedures. All right, is there any more? We're on the second page, so don't feel like that's all our opportunities.
There might be more, but I mean,
Yeah.
you know, I
We
think
don't
we
need
done-
These are the ones we need to focus on, yeah. And again, we may.
You want to tack it at the bottom of that one?
Oh,
Still
right
opportunity.
here.
Yeah, there you go, because it's a continuation.
Take it away from top.
That one just might hold on something.
Yeah, actually, I think the reason that that one didn't hold is because we pulled it on and off a couple of times. I've had good luck with these in the past holding, but.
Sometimes the
Well,
moisture's
and
in the
also
wall.
That wall is all, yeah, not as,
There's a pool here, so there's a lot of moisture in
and there's,
here.
that's true, that's true. Okay, threats, there are certainly threats to our,
Well, right now,
water resources.
there's a bad publicity out there, you know, the public's perception.
Yeah,
Right now, the authority is that RWR and WSA are mortal enemies, and that's not
yeah.
true, but that's, you know.
Well, it's a weakness, but it's also a threat. How did we, damaged reputation? Credibility, yeah, it's definitely a threat. Because, you know, much as we've been successful in the past at being influential and
Yeah,
getting support for what we need.
It's a
Yeah.
threat to the influence that
Yeah,
previously enjoyed with the public.
I think one of the problems that feeds into that was the fact that it lied dormant for the first, 10 years?
It was an
And-
invisible line.
And so you started out, you were 10 years behind. So there's a lot of catch up, and there's going to be a lot of contention in trying to, set priorities when all the priorities are
Well,
priorities.
and we did not, it took 2 or 3 years, probably close to 3 years to even understand the priorities.
That's true, that's true.
yeah, but it's interesting because you're right. And we started out and, there was good public perception. We had a lot of accomplishments right off the bat. The working relationship was excellent, and then we just, we got off track and it's become a threat, yeah.
I think the interbasin transfer legislation is a threat.
That's
Yeah.
very good, very, very good.
Yep.
What you call settlement in the reservoir.
Yeah.
Do what?
Settlement in the reservoir.
Well, that's an operational issue though, what, Elaine, as opposed to, this is.
No, right. But us not having the money, though.
I was going to say, the inability to fund it is a threat.
Yes.
Yeah.
But we've got that inability, we've got that.
Yeah, but it's a threat. The sediment in the reservoir, maybe we need to state it differently. It's definitely a threat.
Yeah, but it's an operational.
It's an operational problem, but solving it is also
A long-term funding problem.
it's a long-term
Well,
funding problem.
well, funding then becomes a threat, because, you can't address the sediment, you're not gonna be able to address a lot of things without funding.
Well,
Just sediment in itself is a
you
threat.
know,
We have to-
it is,
What's the threat is to the.
inability to bank for the future is the threat.
Yeah, inability to bank for the future, but it was also, we've covered it,
There's a functional part.
we've covered it under various things.
But the problem is, it is something.
Resource management.
Yeah, but here you're trying to state the threats directly.
Exactly.
So you might repeat some things, so.
And that's true, because there are some weaknesses for which there's not really a threat. I mean, that's why you know.
That's right, it's a weakness, but it hasn't migrated to the point of becoming a
Yeah,
threat is something that's imminent.
The inability to bank for the future is a threat.
Yes.
I think not having enough ratepayers is a threat.
Yes.
Well,
Yeah.
The
foreclosures.
foreclosures.
Well,
Well,
we have got,
rather than bank for the future, why don't we say the inability to finance asset maintenance?
asset maintenance, because that.
Inability to finance asset maintenance, because that's the settlement is asset maintenance.
Asset replacement.
Okay.
So that's.
Well, but the settlement's not really replacement, asset,
Yes,
Well,
it
Combined two
is.
different threats, I think.
No, it,
Yeah, you can state them as two separate items.
to a degree it is and a degree it isn't. To replace, the idea of
Well,
replacement is
asset
you're taking the
protection.
dirt out so the water can be there.
Get back in.
okay. Inability to finance asset protection is what covers it
Okay,
all.
right.
Okay. All right, that's a good compromise.
Because it is a form of replacement.
Yeah.
Because for all the dirt we take out.
Some of it's repair, some of it's replacement, some of it's maintenance.
Acre feet of sediment we take out, water can be stored there, which we can do something with.
Lack of new development to fund the,
Actually, yeah. lack of
Yep,
new
like
development.
new development.
I wouldn't say lack of new development at this
Well,
point.
doesn't
What
that-
I would say is foreclosures. We have 2,000 vacant meters, and we have probably, at more than that, we have those that are only paying minimum,
I think they both are.
new development gives you
Two
income.
separate items.
They're definitely two separate
Yeah,
items.
the new development.
But
is
lack of
being
new
primarily
development-
industrial.
I think is a threat.
Industrial in particular.
Instead of the inter-basin transfer legislation, we probably ought to be broader than that and just say,
No, that's specific,
That's very.
well, it is a specific threat.
To identify a threat, you want to be as specific as you
Well,
can.
that's true, that's true.
Watershed,
The metropolitan water.
Well,
water planning district out of our back pockets.
watershed, one of the threats would be going back to the Big Haynes Creek Management Plan, inactivity on the Big Haynes Creek Management Technical Committee. I mean, in other words, that's a watershed protection issue that we don't have any communication on at this point.
Is it still a committee?
but that's probably
Oh,
more
it'll
an
have to be
opportunity.
reconstituted.
Are you speaking of the one that we had up in Gwinnett?
It's with Gwinnett, Walton, and
Did we list that under opportunity?
I think that comes under opportunity unless you can identify a
Yeah, we
specific
need
threat.
to revitalize, that's an opportunity.
that's, yeah.
Yeah, I agree,
revitalize.
that's an
What was the
opportunity.
name of that committee?
Big Haynes Management, Technical Committee. The Technical Committee is the Stormwater Committee, that's the important.
Restore, revive.
Huh?
What's the name of it, Elaine?
Big Haynes, Management Technical Committee, which is basically a stormwater thing. That's the way we interface, because obviously somebody's stormwater is not working very well because of the settlement we've got. Now, it could be, basically, you could say that all we learned from USGS, who is complaining about us finding somebody else cheaper to do our monitoring, is probably there would be complaining, is that when it doesn't rain, we don't get any sediment. When it rains a good bit, we get a lot of sediment.
This kind of work for it.
Can
So,
droughts and/or floods be a threat?
both, yes, droughts and floods.
Yeah,
I know.
We
yeah.
can't do a whole lot without.
Would you say drought control of supply control during a drought and management?
Yeah, there might be operations too.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking,
Yeah.
that's exactly where I was thinking.
Okay. I think you're
Yeah,
right.
because they've got on theirs on things like mandatory water restrictions.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's operations, that's not really
What
an
about-
authority grant.
Do we see, you mentioned this Metropolitan Water Planning District, or they really are allied, or are they somebody we need to keep an eye on?
Somebody you need to keep
We need
an
to keep
eye
an
on.
eye
I
on.
think they're,
I'll give you a perfect example of that.
Well, then is the Metropolitan Planning Authority a threat? Or possible,
it's a
Metropolitan-
possible threat.
Depends what the rules
potential
are.
authority actions or
Because
impossible?
they
Yeah,
are-
their
A
actions.
perfect
Yeah.
example is when they were coming up with all the legislation for the interbasin transfers,
Mhm.
districts like in Columbus
What's it called again?
started to create legislation that would have affected our interbasins.
Right.
And so if we don't stay on top of that legislation, they could put something through the House that would affect us, and we'd be sitting there going, what was that?
Absolutely.
That's why you need to keep having regular meetings with your state reps and your state senators.
Well, we also, I mean, I go to the, except in Atlanta, I go to the basin.
You know, Lorraine and I
Basin.
and
Chip,
Chip and Lee
yes. and
are all on, we're still on that Okonogi Advisory Council.
Actually,
Which is
instead
part
of
of that.
actions, should it say recommendations? They don't really. They're-
I think we have to watch very carefully their recommendations because they're focused more on
Actions and
Atlanta,
legislation.
DeKalb, Gwinnett, and Cobb.
If they're not spending time with you in
No,
Rockdale,
legislative,
then they're not
recommendations.
having Rockdale's best interest at heart.
They do not have our best interest. They're not paying attention to us. They're focused on strictly the challenge.
That's exactly right.
We're always looked at as a donor county for everything that comes up for
Yes.
regional
The
stuff.
T-Splosh is a perfect example
Yes.
of how these counties work together.
Well,
Yes,
The
we
T-Splosh
don't.
is a good example.
T-Splosh was a threat,
Yes.
Yep, it was.
but now it's
Now
not.
it's gone.
It's no longer on the board. Let's see.
Competition for funding sources could be a threat. I don't know
Yeah.
if they do.
Yeah.
What competition,
T-Splosh,
no,
other.
I mean, other counties or,
With GFA,
Grants.
now with GFA, of course, they blinded all those, just that wonderful, to give to reservoirs that are being built. What we need to watch for is eventually EPD's going to understand that the reservoirs that they have promoted get dirt in them. And there's no mechanism to get that dirt out.
There's always capital improvement money, there's never maintenance money.
Yes,
I tell you, an imminent threat, if we don't get additional money for a rate increase for our assets, they're going to fall apart. I mean, you look.
Well, yeah, not only that, we're not gonna meet EPD mandates and we're gonna have.
That's right. Oh,
Well-
Lack of funding, period.
EPD mandates, south side plants.
oh yeah.
Yeah, we've
that is
got-
an imminent threat.
It is, but is it different than inability to finance asset protection? Or, I mean, it might be, but.
Yeah, this is,
I see the EPD as a direct threat,
yeah.
not a sub.
EPD mandates.
Federal mandates, period, or unfunded mandates.
How are you coming with a date?
On the south side.
Yeah,
They agreed to do, well, first of all, we're trying to get the permits renewed for all the south sides through 2017.
17.
And they're doing a
Or-
waste load study to evaluate what's going to happen after 2017. So.
Okay,
Okay, we have to
to
park
2017.
Oh, we have to park it.
Oh, okay, you're right, I'm sorry.
Sorry.
Yeah, we
See how
got,
much we are coming?
yeah, we got sidetracked.
Okay, if you want it on the park board, we can put it there. If we're just going, okay. Yeah, unfunded mandates is a.
Yeah, now, and I'm not sure how to state this, because I don't want to give the wrong impression, but if we don't And let's see, you got inability to finance that asset protection.
Yeah, but,
Maybe that's,
or, not getting a rate increase is a threat. I guess you could say that.
I mean, we're not gonna be able to fund our master plan and, the assets that we need to replace them.
I would say that inability to increase revenue.
Yeah, that's a better way. Excellent. Work with the newspapers.
That was the more PC pronunciation of that.
That was the politician side of me.
I recognized it immediately.
Parentheses, no rate increase. Actually, I think we need to say it. Sorry. Because the mandates are huge.
But under that is also the loss of ratepayers through foreclosures, the loss of revenue through lack of development.
Yeah.
Look at all the sewer fees you had to give back because, developments went bankrupt.
No question. And that's why both are a huge threat, not just foreclosures. I mean,
we've been reduced, the capacity is generally there, or part of the capacity is there. Well, one of the other threats is old plants. We've got, Almond Branch is an old plant.
Yeah,
oh, wait, yeah, not just plant.
It's old. It's 40
Not
years
just,
old.
not the old infrastructure, but it's, we have a lot of,
That particular plant, we have to recognize that, if you have to deal
What
with
plant?
gears, Almond Branch,
yeah.
you've
Oh,
got
yeah.
various pieces of equipment out there that if it breaks, you
Yeah,
can't
that's-
get
that's-
parts.
That's a valid concern.
Okay, so,
As the plants age, they do become almost impossible to maintain.
obsolete plants,
Yeah.
obsolete plants.
Obsolete plants.
You have to replace them.
That's what I was trying to.
Yes,
Obsolescence.
because you can't, they don't make parts for those anymore. So what, you have to go get,
Is that the recycling bin?
you have to go get a
Myself.
metal shop to
Gotta go recycle.
make parts.
I would say that, assets that are, not.
Obsolete plants and equipment, because, you've
Yeah.
got other things that's not in a plant that will become obsolete too.
I'm trying to say something about the pipes that are beyond their life cycle, because you just never know if they're just gonna, we keep spraying leaks on pipes that long needed to be replaced, so,
I don't know if it's an opportunity or not, but have you ever had a relining of pipes project here?
You know, I don't know on a large scale if we've done relining, but again, that's an expense too. It's.
Well, that's,
yeah, but
less-
it,
you generally do relining
and it's,
in areas where you don't want to dig.
and it's also, it's not WSA, it's RWR.
Yeah, it is.
But
It's an
you know
operation.
what, I'm gonna put as an opportunity, we've talked about it a long time, and it's kind of a big enough deal, and that is, I wanna call it the red map, not the red map, the map that we were gonna do of the age of the,
That's the red map,
you call it red map?
red pipe map.
Well, they're not necessarily red, but.
And actually,
How about pipe priority map? That's what we're
Yeah,
really talking about.
yes, pipe priority map is
so you color coded according to
Yes.
the age of the.
Yes.
Mhm.
It's just such a good, threat, maybe this is what I was trying to get at with pipes, is, no asset database. Or, I know it's kind of operations, but from the standpoint of where.
For planning
assets-
purposes.
Wouldn't that come under inability to finance asset protection?
You can't even get there, you don't even know what financing you need until you have this.
You need to make it part of that sentence then, somehow, inability to finance asset protection and create database.
But a threat, I think it's a threat that we don't have
Our
one.
database, that database.
Maybe,
Let's take this and through now.
it might be operations, but
Um,
is that what you're gonna say?
No, if you, we know that, I guess you're saying the threat is not being able to replace the assets.
Yes, you're right. Well, not even being able to identify which assets need focus. No targeted,
No organized database for assets.
Right, but it still ties
no,
back
but
to assets.
the threat is, I hear what he's saying. This is a weakness. To make it, I'm gonna put it as a weakness, to make it a threat,
Yeah, that is a weakness.
Yeah, because one of the things that has never happened is that y'all are still struggling with a meter database. I'm trying to get that together, and that was something that RWR never had, was a meter database.
yes. Okay, the threat though is,
They had a database.
misplaced asset protection priorities. How about that?
Say that again, that's a mouthful.
Um,
It's got to be something physically that's going to happen as a result of.
You're right. I don't know how we appropriately allocate capital dollars that we have to maintain, repair, replace our assets if we don't have any clue which ones are in worse shape than the others, which ones have a life cycle that has long expired, which ones, you know. So the threat is that even if we had the dollars, we don't have the tools in place to funnel them appropriately.
So a study. A threat is not having a study to identify.
Well, yeah, not having the asset.
What relates to that, and I don't know how you can state this, but, you know we have the leaks, we know we've got a weak infrastructure. Do we have a infrastructure survey?
Right.
Well, that's the database.
Or, well,
Not really.
is that part of the database, or
Here's what I see as the database.
identifying the priorities of leaks and the
Well,
pipes that need to be replaced?
that's the pipe priority map. That is the pipe, which you have to get, but the first thing you need, you list all your assets. Here's the date they were purchased. Here is their shelf life. Here's how far we are in the shelf life. Here's how much they cost. You know, if you know how much they cost, and you know what their shelf life is, then basically you divide their shelf life by their cost, and you should be budgeting that much every year.
Okay.
Number one. Number two, once you actually have that funding, you need to know where is it that you need to spend that money.
Right, you don't need
Is
to
it-
hijack
is
it somewhere
You don't
else.
want to hijack money that's needed more desperately to be spent somewhere else, and we have no system in place to do that.
That's where you lose the public trust, is every time that they invest in something and then it's used for something else.
Well, or that it's simply, you know, we're taking care of low-hanging fruit, and we're not addressing the elephant in the room. I mean, you know, to me, it is the most fundamental failure we have.
So is that a third-party engineering study that needs to take
It
place?
is a third-party development of I think it is, yeah. But I think it's a threat. The reason it's a threat is because even if we had the funding,
You
we
have
wouldn't
limited
have
staff.
intelligence of where to
So
put
if
it.
it's a third party, it can be funded
Wouldn't it
separately.
be considered a threat though, if some outside source came in and said, okay, where's your worst pipe problem today? Could we tell them that?
No, of course not.
With our color code though, I've done.
But we don't have it yet.
You know, on the water system, now, remember we started the color code on the pipes.
Yeah, we've got,
We got that.
and we know,
We correlate them with the age?
Well, but see, but then you also have to weigh, you finally start collecting money to manage your assets. We don't just have pipes, we have equipment at the plants, we have motors, we have, you know, where is the greatest need for the dollars we're collecting? We don't have a clue. You know, something breaks, we go fix it.
Yeah.
If we had prevented the break, we could have saved a lot of money.
It was like a Band-Aid, basically.
Part of that though is, the solution to that is in our master plan. That's providing us with the guidance on where our money
It
is going to
is,
be
but we're
spent.
operating, we are doing that master plan in the dark without knowing this information. But the master plan is driven very largely by EPD mandates. We can't help
Well,
that.
to a certain extent.
But if we do a master plan without this, it is a shot in the dark. We still don't know what is our greatest asset threat in terms of its age, life cycle, and where it is in that life cycle. We don't know that.
We don't have a complete 100% asset listing. We do have a partial listing. When we look
But
at
a
this,
list isn't,
and what I'm saying is like, we may have 70–80% of it. We don't have 100% grant.
but a list isn't.
But what I'm saying is, that's what's formed the basis for the master plan as we now have it. Our spending for the next 20 years is going to be guided by that master plan.
That's right, and the master plan is not guided by that, and that's a threat.
well, we put it down to get an asset database,
Yeah.
right? But we know we need an asset database. And it'll be maybe a little cheaper, with the staff
Right.
sorting through now.
And we do have.
Updated.
When you say
But a list isn't a database.
it's
To start.
it's a start. Yeah.
It's a start.
It's
A list isn't a management tool. We lack
well, what I'm saying
asset
is,
management.
it's not like we don't have a list of any of our assets. We do.
Well, I know.
We don't have a thorough list. When we
I'm not talking about a list. See, I'm talking
Talking
about an
about
asset
that.
management tool. A list is not an asset management.
well,
It's part of it, no.
It's a start. But I still say, I don't know, to me, it's the lack of having that's a threat to our ability to properly fund and manage our capital.
well, you can leave an upset. We can certainly, it's one. It's one of those where it's debatable, but we'll leave it. I mean,
It's debatable.
No,
That,
without it,
that stresses me.
well, Linda came up with, not long ago, well, it's been over a year ago, when she was talking about the pumps at the water treatment plant, that we were down to, 25% or something like that. We were down to a shocking amount. We had no money to replace anything.
sure.
The efficiency of the pumps down to 25%?
No, but the efficiency of the pumps, in other words, they've been in the ground for 10 years. That's just about it for them.
Yeah,
And
so-
they're literally all wearing out now.
Yeah, from-
Right, and we should have been able to predict that years ago, not stumble upon it. That's a threat.
They've gone through their
See, that's exactly, thank you.
service life.
That's why it's a threat.
To the point where they're going to have to start being replaced as they start to wear out.
I mean, they're starting to
I'm
wear
looking
out.
for something like a George Butler for all of the, that is the perfect example of why it's a threat. We should not stumble upon that information and have it be, the problem is, we should have known that years ago.
It started,
known that 20
we
years
started having maintenance problems. Then we borrowed some vibration equipment from ESG, which they test the motors out of the sewer plant in Quig in particular with vibration equipment. So I think because the vibration equipment helps to tell you whether you've got impellers and other things in your motors that are doing not the right thing.
First vertical.
I'm gonna change this
Just a vibration, we used a
to
nickel.
poor asset management.
It's
That's
clear
okay.
that it works.
And it works.
We need to get back on track.
But-
Let's change it to poor asset management.
Right. Anyway, we are now having to replace, I mean, all of us, it looks like they're basically wearing out at one time. And
Asset protection
How about,
plan, poor asset protection.
lack of, asset, the management tool is what you're speaking of is a structured database like George Webb.
Right,
Yeah,
it's a
exactly.
structured database
Exactly.
that tells
We
you.
don't have, we have.
Well, I took that out because you told me to, I think it's a
Is it-
threat.
And it would be a management forecast tool.
Leave that, that's fine.
It would be a management forecast tool
Yeah, it is.
that tells you, okay, in 3 or 4 years, you better have the money to replace this.
So it's the poor asset protection planning
Yeah.
is the issue.
So if you don't have that, what's the threat as a result of not
The
having?
threat is you find out that
You
you've
stumble
got
on your own
25%
quit.
capacity in your stuff and you have no money to deal with it. The threat is we almost went bankrupt a few years ago
Right,
because we weren't,
but is the threat only due to us not knowing, or us not only not knowing, but even knowing, not having the money?
yes, that's why you
Yes.
have this and this.
It's two things.
It is, it's inability, it's not knowing and then it's inability to finance it too.
It's sort of like if you know you've got old pipes, like we do know how many approximately we've got in the ground. If you don't know, because that's going to have a cost associated with replacing, and you don't even have the money or don't have any way to get the money, then,
And you don't even how to know what to ask for,
right.
which means
If
not
you're
gonna get it.
if you're planning for $100,000 in repairs and all of a sudden you have a collapse on a main artery and you have to spend $300,000 and you didn't see it coming, that's a threat.
That's a threat, exactly.
My only two issues with the last two, we sort of drifted off because we're supposed to be talking about threats directly to WSA and not the system itself.
Well, asset protection is a threat to WSA because we own the assets.
Okay, but what about,
Well, we own the assets.
Obsolete
Okay,
plants,
okay.
if we got to
okay,
face
all right,
replacing.
I can see it under that, okay.
Okay.
They've got a
Anything
plan
else?
for bonds, they've got a plan for different things that are their responsibility.
That's right. I mean, you either replace them with rate increases, you replace them with bonds, or you replace them with SPLOST.
We can't educate anybody on what we need. We don't.
Right, if we're not asking for it.
In a patchwork situation, you are always hitting the ratepayer. And with a master plan and knowing your infrastructure and the weaknesses of the infrastructure, you can then bond to have and carry the burden out over a period of 20 years rather than having to hit the ratepayer in the pocketbook and double or triple his rates immediately.
That's very true. That's very true. Okay, what else? Any more threats?
I was trying to relate threats to the county that translate into threats for WSA and RWR, and primarily economy-related threats. If the economy doesn't grow, then there's going to be resistance to any increase in rates. People were saying, oh, we're having a tough time just trying to meet all our other bills.
Consent decree, put down consent decree.
Okay,
I mean,
those
consent
are
decree
consent.
is
Is that different than unfunded mandates?
Yes,
Um,
a consent decree is.
you could almost put a slash, it's EPD mandate.
Yeah, it
It's an
is.
EPD mandate, but instead of unfunded, put consent decree. Because a consent decree has EPD giving you a short range of time, not 20
That's
years.
exactly right.
They'll give you 8 years.
Yeah.
And you go to the bond market and have to pay whatever you gotta pay.
Yeah.
Public education is gonna relate to that in some fashion.
But that's probably an opportunity as opposed to a threat, or you think? Because we're not threatened with an inability to educate.
That's right.
But if
we don't
if
educate.
if we don't make people aware, and I can,
Yeah, that's our opportunity.
It's an opportunity.
Yeah, I think, I'm glad consent decree is in there because that's.
Yeah, I agree. It's a mandate that's a hammer. It's an immediate
And
hammer.
that's why the chaos.
When does this current SPLOST end?
2016, or is it 2017?
2017, I think.
So a
Because
threat,
it was 6
3 or
years
4
and it started
months,
in
3 or 4
2011.
months into.
a threat would be not being prepared and having the population educated about the needs of water
Right.
concerning the next SPLOST,
The next block.
which will start probably in 2014 preparing for it.
Right, so not having the support for funding needs.
Right. And that means one has to start educating now.
So that means you all have to be prepared by 2014, let's say, when that new SPLOST committee comes together to start planning, because they have to approve projects before it goes on the ballot.
Which is why this is a threat.
Yes. So you really have 2 years right now, less than 2 years.
We were saying if we didn't get continue to get SPLOST funding beyond 2016, 2017, then the money for maintaining certain programs, that it was the water lines and so forth, would have to be absorbed through rates.
what's
Rates
the
and
percentage
bonds.
of current SPLOST that water and sewer are getting?
Percentage-wise, we're getting, what, $13 million out of, what's the total?
78 million or something like
Yeah,
that?
very.
60 million.
Very
I
small.
thought it was like 70-something million total.
65 or 70,000.
Does anybody-
No, we don't get it.
No,
about
we
12,
had
thought it was
this quote,
15,
T-SPLOST for transportation. Worst case scenario is a W-SPLOST.
Is
We
what?
don't get anything out of that.
No, I'm talking about having a totally separate SPLOST for water and sewer.
We could put that as an opportunity.
By the general fund though, because they come to rely so heavily on SPLOST for a lot of their
Yeah.
capital.
I don't believe we'll ever get it. I mean, we could call it an opportunity.
We probably won't get a total splosh, but what we might get is a majority.
That's where your people of influence come in. You have to build those relationships.
Right.
Get more than just 10 or 12 million, get a good bit more, because what we need to pay for is that new south side plan, almost totally out of the splosh.
Do we have any threats, and this might just be RWR, but I'll throw it out, any public safety threats if there were catastrophic failure? I mean, that of any systems? That's more of a WSA thing, I mean, RWR.
It is.
Okay,
Do you think uneducated public is not a threat?
yeah.
An
What I'm trying to say.
uneducated
Yeah, so
public
what-
is a threat.
That's where I was heading with educating the public. An uneducated public is a definite threat.
It is.
Because they don't seem to understand.
That's right, they don't understand, they're not gonna support it.
That's right.
Yeah.
War,
Which is why that's such a huge threat.
Right.
Yeah. Let's see, I need your help again on this, restating this. Not only do we have to deal with the public, but we have to deal with the Board of Commissioners.
Right.
And they also have to go through the educational process
Yeah.
too. Because if they're not, haven't bought into it, you are not gonna get to the public with it. Because
Well-
they have to be on board.
Yeah, a lack of support from DOC is a threat unto itself because we're dependent on them. It is.
So we have to make sure that we have their support as we go forward.
Well, hopefully you'll have a BOC member that understands water one day.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we haven't had that.
No, we haven't.
There hasn't been, that's not been the case.
I think it's good that you're a party to seeing exactly what goes in the process. I mean, it's not just us saying, okay, well, let's just see how much of an increase we need this year, and that's what we'll do. It's a lot of thinking that goes into this.
Well, and Ed pointed out that really the basis for most economic development is water and sewer.
Absolutely.
Not transportation, but water and sewer.
Education,
Education.
education and infrastructure. I think transportation
Trans-
is important.
Surface roads are included in that.
Yeah,
Mhm.
but,
Well, that's infrastructure.
Infrastructure, yeah. Okay, are we good on the rest? We have done fabulous.
if we had more of us here, we wouldn't have got
But we also must remember two things. Las Vegas was built in the middle of a desert with no access, and Disney World was built in the middle of a swamp that had no access. So anything can be done.
Yes, but it's very expensive to do.
Yeah.
You know, throw this out as a potential threat, and maybe it's not. I had an interesting conversation yesterday with my dentist. It's Dr. Curl, longtime community active, active in the community. And he was saying, he said, I used to be way more involved in the community. And he said, I feel like we have become more fragmented. He said, if you remember back when you first came to Rockdale, there was a huge pool of people that would step in and work for the betterment of the county. Now you have a very small pool.
But you have a commuter resident. This is a bedroom community.
The bedrooms become,
It's hard for people who work in Atlanta, for instance, or outside the county, to take a lunch at a time to go to a planning board meeting or a water meeting or something like that. They're slaves to their job in Atlanta, and they're too far away to do that. Whereas before, in a smaller community, people lived here, worked here, and they could they were more professional people that were in the community, could take the time to do it.
That is true. It was already a bedroom community pretty far when I came.
I think
But, and maybe that goes under uneducated public. Maybe it's not a different thing, but I think he's got a point that,
There is a shrinking pool.
there is a shrinking pool.
And it's what you try to, I know, even with, when I was on the board of South Rockdale, I used to keep my eyes and ears peeled for people who seem to be interested and wanted to be activists or help with various things. But there is a shrinking pool, and it's a sad thing. I mean,
we become isolationists.
We have become isolationists, and I think the polarization on the political side has hurt too, that people are so polarized by ideology that they don't really focus so much on community anymore.
No, they don't.
They almost focus more on what divides them than what.
Right.
Well, one of the things in future planning that I've always thought was, tremendous foresight, and that's the village district area, the village plan. What's happened is our villages are broken up and we've gone in different directions.
Mm-hmm.
But with the way that the futures are planned now is around that. Eat, work, sleep in a general area. And with telecommunicating and all that kind of stuff, there'll be more of that as we move down the road 20 and 30 years.
Yeah, we're kind of going back to the what worked
we'll
originally.
Go back to that, or we'll implode around it.
Yeah. Well.
But one of the things that I identified and why I do what I do is that I lived in places where communities bigger than this, not much, 100,000 people or so.
Yeah.
And we had our own TV station that educated people about local news. Had our own radio stations that had talk shows, and they focused on the local news. Here, everything is Atlanta-centric. You turn 3, 4 TV stations and the news is all about Atlanta. Only if some tragedy happens in Rockdale County does something get reported. So people are more educated. If you took a survey, they would know more about what's going on in Atlanta, even though they live here, than they do about what goes on in Rockdale County.
And part of that, I thought I think they're synergistic. I mean, if you look at the local newspapers, we actually did have a local radio station.
Yes, we
The
did.
Rockdale Citizen was totally focused on Rockdale. It was not Rockdale Newton. And it was, if it was important to the community, it was in the paper. It wasn't just, well, if we have time to send someone. You know, we covered government extensively and completely and thoroughly. That's not really done anymore, and so I think it both contributes to the lack of community cohesiveness, and the lack of community cohesiveness probably contributes to that. There's not as great a demand for it. But
This is a big one too.
yeah, but I almost do see it as a threat for the long term. You know, it's both having an educated public, but it's also having a public who even really cares about, you know, infrastructure here, good schools in some cases. That's not our issue, but I kind of think
Sometimes they'll care only when the water goes off.
or sometimes they'll care only because there's going to be a rate increase, but they don't you know, why, it's just not something they're even going to pay attention to. So I don't know, I think...
We've become a society of expectations. We expect the water to turn on. We expect government to function. We're not prepared individually for participation.
Exactly.
Someone else is doing that.
Yeah. And, well, I mean,
Community's made up of individuals.
I even look
Yeah.
down the road because we do
Yes.
have a good authority, but if you look at our authority, you've been involved and concerned about water issues forever. I've been involved and concerned about water issues in the 30, 40 years I've been here.
I've spent my entire career, 35 years in the water business.
But, you know, there's not that many people moving forward into the future that are going to have that type of, well, we mentioned historical knowledge, but, you know, willingness to put that much time into it. I don't know. I kind of do see.
That's
it
why
as
if you go to the
long-term.
schools,
I kinda
some
do see
kids
it
will
as
get
long-term.
inspired. There's a lot of reason for outreach,
Yeah.
and that's part of the outreach.
Lack of community interest or
Community focus.
yeah, community focus.
And also, when you have a group of people who move into a place who it's not easy for them to be integrated.
No,
into
it's
They
not.
don't have a vested interest.
Right.
Well, they also don't have the relationships for people to invite them in. How many of you have belonged to churches or Lions Club or Kiwanis or something where you met people that said, hey, we'd like you to participate in this or that, and that's how you got involved? And like I said, if you're commuting back and forth and you spend 12, 14 hours outside the county, when you come home, you're not ready to go participate in
No,
something.
you're not.
You're tired, you spend half your time commuting.
Right.
Exactly.
Jobs here.
I mean, that's funny because you say we'll have a meeting at night. A lot of people don't even get home in time for those.
Right.
When you commute. Anyway, okay, well, I think that was good. We just accomplished a tremendous amount, I think, because this kind of, the things that we did so far lay the foundation for the.
And Ed and Tom were utterly vital
Yeah.
for that to happen.
You got additional input?
I'm gonna
It makes
I'm
me
gonna
feel very good
suggest
because there
that,
is
Yeah.
additional input from, you might say the public.
I'm gonna suggest that we might want to, stop here for a couple of reasons. Number one, give us all a chance to absorb this. number two, so far, everything we focused on has been where we are now, and the next focus is where we're going. So it's a whole different attitude. It's a good place to be fresh.
Yes.
And then the third thing is hopefully, we really need more board support,
Yes.
more board participation if we can get it on where we're going. So if we can get this out to everybody, give people an opportunity to look at it, review it, provide feedback if they see any other things, and then move forward with that.
Who's going to take the sheets?
But I'll take them and, oh, well, you can take them and write them up. Would you do that? That'd be awesome. I didn't realize you were gonna be here. We so much appreciate that. I can't tell you, right, I can't tell you how much we appreciate that, because it's a lot of work.
And she can correct all your misspelling.
And she can correct all my misspell, but, you know, having to follow up with this is an awful lot of work. I agree with whoever said we don't need to start all over because people weren't here, but I think if we can get this out to everybody and I'll send out something to let folks know. In fact, if you get it together and get it to me, I'll send it out with an explanation of how we need it.
One thing,
It also shows, like, how, it will show the board of commissioners, I think, but it shows how important it is for RWR and WSA to be talking to each other on the same
absolutely,
page.
absolutely.
Because we do provide different functions, and I don't think this board of commissioners really realizes that.
The thing that I will caution you all on is, for the last couple of weeks, now Darrell, not sure if Darrell was in on any of them or not, but you all have studied the process. Remember now, you will hit them cold. Most of them have not seen any of them, not familiar with the SWOT analysis, and not familiar with the
Well, and that's why, they've seen it, whether they've had it, but that's why I wanted her to send that to me, and I'm going to send out a good summary of explanation, how we got here,
And
and
hopefully
why.
they'll read it.
Well, hopefully they'll read it. And I don't mind,
The only thing I'm saying is you may have to spend a little time to bring them up.
no, I agree, at the next meeting,
Garbage product.
assuming there's more,
Bill Ray